First for 2024, hoping to ensure that 2024 is a year that is full of prosperity, grace, and of course, house music all year long. I've got a very special show to kick off the new year, of course, and we're on the eve of course, Black History Month. We'll be doing some special coverage, getting in some guests who, of course, happen to be Black and celebrate the culture. As you know, house music is a creative force out of the African American community here in Chicago. We are very proud of that fact. And we celebrate it here on every episode of the Vintage House Show. So you're tuned in to the right place if that's your thing. WNUR Street Beat, we're thrilled to host this program, but it's more than a program. It's always a special night in Evanston here at the WNUR studios. So let's get started. I am joined tonight by my guest who has an incredible story to tell. I like to focus on the business of house music when I host. We've got such a great variety of people that tell stories about the music, the culture, the lifestyle. And like I said, I like to focus on the business because it is a business as much as it is a form of entertainment. And so tonight's guest has an interesting business perspective to share with you all. As you may know, and hopefully have tuned in for this very reason, tonight's guest, Louie Green, is in studio with me to share his story about how he navigated getting appropriate credit for one of or several of Chicago and the world's most revered house songs. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on board and have Louie join me here in studio live on the Vintage House Show. Louie Green.
Hello.
Hello, Louie Green. I don't know that the rest of the world can hear you, but I can hear you.
Okay. I'll keep saying test until you get it together. Test. Hello.
You are hot, sir.
I'm hot. Awesome.
But people streaming our show tonight could certainly hear you. So everybody who's tuned in to hear the Louie Green story, welcome. And I welcome you and appreciate you as well. Louie, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Kevin. How you doing?
Good. You are certainly no stranger to the WNUR studios. We've been honored to have you in studio helping get some of these stories out. But now tonight is your night to tell your story. And in fact, I know you've been doing a lot of work over the past few years, getting ready for the moment that you're living in right now. But I want to certainly start from the beginning and understand what your journey into the house music community was. Okay. How'd you get here?
Well, I guess I got here like a lot of other, young men and women growing up on the south side of Chicago. House is just like part of our DNA, right? So
no doubt.
I went to a Catholic school, Catholic grammar school. Me and my friends, we listened to house music. We grew up listening to it on the radio. We were breakdancing before that. And it was funny. I remember I was at a party when I was young. in grammar school, and we were breakdancing, and this guy couldn't beat me at breakdancing, and he started housing, and I just looked at him and shook my head. Said, I had nothing for that, But that was kind of like one of my first introductions to house, like from a dancer perspective, In grammar school, I was going to St. Dorothy's on 78th and Everhart, and
Southeast side, yeah.
yeah, and man, I just really fell in love with disco, you know, and I like the big band stuff,
Charlie Kalelo Orchestra, and
salsa orchestra, all of that. Like, I enjoyed all of that, and what I really enjoyed more than anything was the parties and the camaraderie, So like, you could go to, I went to Mount Carmel, but you can go to a Leo party, a Mount Carmel party. I never went to any High Park parties, but racquetball club party, those were huge. Of course, all of the Catholic schools, because you know how they used to promote each Catholic school against another Catholic school, or this school against that school, to try to get everybody to come out, which was, genius.
Okay, I got to pause you right there,
Okay.
Because I went to St. Francis de Sales, and Mount Carmel and St. Francis had a bit of a rivalry. Not much from the St. Francis side, but Pioneers stand up. Go ahead now. You can continue.
We are MC. Okay. So any of my Mount Carmel brothers out there, you know what I'm saying? We standing strong together. All right. So any case, yeah. So I just love the music, and I grew up on like 80th and Merrill, and I had a friend that used to live across the street from me. This guy named Timmy. Some people call him like Tim Beats Now, whatever. I think that's what they call him, his DJ name. But we started like DJing together, and we started buying records together. And, my dad would take me down to Import Records every weekend. My mom and my dad were like separated or divorced. So, I got to put the clamps on him on the weekend and make sure that, he let me spend $20 or more every weekend to go buy some records. And so I go down to Imports, and Clarence used to be down there. Like, man, every weekend he'd have records set aside for me, like right away. He'd be like, man, you need these. And I'd be like, I haven't heard of that one. He'd be like, you need that. And I'd be like, and I get it home when I play it. I'm like, oh, this is that track. This is that song, And so that's how I started, building my record collection and spinning on the SLB 100s. And
wait, belt drives?
Man, I didn't have no money for no high tech turntables. I mean, a lot of DJs would come up there and be like, I had 1200s, and I went, to the music box, and I went here and I went there. Listen, I'm 52. I never went to the music box. I wanted to go to the music box. I had a good mom, so she wasn't letting me do all that. So
I'm gonna also give you some leeway and rope, because you're a little on the younger side. You're a young man.
I am. So those are things I wanted to do, but it wasn't gonna happen. And I had like a belt drive turntable that my dad had, and then I had an SLB 100, and I had to try to make that stuff work.
Yeah.
And
resourcefulness. I mean, that is Big Shoulders, big city of Chicago's whole vibe, right? You got to figure out how to make it work and do what it do.
And so then I moved to 70th and Chappelle, and there was like I think they still got that plaza up there now, like Jeffrey Plaza and all that. And they had like a little, what do you call it? 31 Flavors right on the corner where I live. And I used to enjoy going up there. So I had a neighbor, because my mom had bought a 3-flat. And he knew this guy named Steve Poindexter. And so he had introduced me to him one day and was like, man, Steve be making tracks, and he's with Gucci Promotions. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, because I seen all the flyers and all that kind of stuff. And so we got cool. We started hanging out, and you talking about a charismatic fellow, man. Like that dude was charismatic. Like he was. Every time you saw him, he had a smile on his face, and like these big bright eyes, and big smile, and and it was like, man, this is Mr. Gucci Promotions. You know what I'm saying?
Help me out with the time frame. Give me perspective on how old you were and how old Steve was at that time.
At that time, I was about 16, and I don't know Steve's exact age. I think he was maybe about 20 at the time.
All right.
So, and it was cool because he, get me into the parties and stuff like that. We hung out. We used to go places together. And if you read one of my articles,
I did.
Like I guess the 909 article, I kind of talked a little bit about that. But like, we'd be hanging out. Actually, back then, a lot of people had electronic stuff in their store windows. When you would go past, like what we used to call, it's not politically appropriate, we used to call them the Chinese shops because they had all the electronic equipment.
Yeah, downtown,
even in the neighborhood or whatever like that.
South side.
And we had walked past one of these shops, and they had a Casio keyboard in the window, and it looked like a little toy. Like it didn't look like nothing you want to buy, because back then I wanted to buy the Ensoniq ESQ1. That was like a real keyboard. But I didn't have a sampler, right? Right, it was a sampler. Yeah. I didn't have Ensoniq ESQ1 money, but you want what you want. You used to get the little magazines and see all the advertisements and all that. And so I looked at that keyboard. Steve was like, man, you should buy that keyboard, man. And I was like, man, that's not a keyboard, that's a toy. He said, nah. He said, any keyboard that don't have no speakers on it, it's a professional keyboard. And I was like, okay. So, I'm like, he older than me, all of that. He know what he's talking about. So I said, let me go ahead and save up my money. So I was working like at Mr. G's grocery store down there on 29th and Vernon, right across from Michael Reese Hospital. I think they were paying me like $3 an hour or something like that. So I saved up my little change and went in there and bought the keyboard. And man, I was excited. I was like, man, I got me a professional keyboard, right? I brought it home, man. Unwrapped it. It had that new keyboard smell. You know what I'm saying? And, I pulled out some cables and jury rig to plug it into something. I put some headphones on.
So you get some amplification.
Right. So I get some amplification. I bought me some D-cell batteries and put them in there. And I started hitting the keys. And it was like, quack, 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 doop, doop, doop. I was like, what is this? This sucks. This sucks.
Hear those.
Oh my God. The sounds were laughable,
Surely you still have this keyboard.
Right? I do have the keyboard.
Yes. Okay.
The sounds were laughable.
The artifacts.
And so I was like, well, I done bought it now. So I said, well, maybe, I can make some sounds. So I started, it came with like a little manual. And they had extra sounds that you could program in from the manual. So I said, oh man, I'm going to, go through all these sounds in the manual. And I'm going to find me some good sounds. So I went through the manual, man. I programmed every sound in there for that manual. And they all sounded like the first ones and came standing with the keyboard, man. You talk about, like, it was crazy. But it was a MIDI keyboard, though. So that was the key.
Yes.
You can MIDI that bad fella. You could, use the musical digital interface, MIDI.
Yeah.
Musical interface digital. Musical, was it?
There's two eyes in there.
Right. Musical
one
interface,
is interface.
Digital, musical instrument digital interface.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding.
Right. So I said, well, you know what? I can use these little riggedy sounds, but I have to figure out what to do. So Steve came by. We started, messing around, and I went and bought a TR 505 and a Roland TR 505. And I bought that one because I didn't have money to buy like a 909 or 808, which is what I really wanted, right? But the TR 505 had like percussions, everything. So timbales, you know what I'm saying? Toms, nice clap, rim shot, all of that. So I was like, man, this is good because I get all of the basic sounds, to make a track.
Enough to make a substantive
Yeah.
Chicago house track.
Exactly. So I said, I'm gonna use this. And then Steve was like, man, Wes, I done seen them do it in the studio, man. You can set up your keyboard and your drum machine, and you can have the drum machine play the keyboard. I said, okay, cool. How do you do that? He said, I don't know. He said, but I done seen people do it. I was like, cool. So, I just opened up the manual. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. So I started reading the manual, and I figured out how to do it. Reading is fundamental. And I never forget, man. I believe it was, and I might be wrong, so nobody yell at me and be like, you don't remember the page. But I think it was like page 38, 39 or something like that in that Roland TR 505 manual. And it talked about MIDI assignment. And I was like, huh.
I think I'm on to something.
Wait a minute. This is kind of cool. So I was like, wait a minute. I can change each one of these drum pads to a different MIDI channel. I said, huh. I said, then I can change my keyboard to assign MIDI channel. I said, I can use this one drum machine to make a track and play the bass line at the same time. Because I didn't have no money to buy nothing else.
There's a related question, Louie, about the price point of the 505 versus the Roland 909.
I don't even remember what the price point was, but I remember I paid about $200 for
that 505,
right?
There it is.
And that 909 was hitting harder than that.
For sure.
And making $3 an hour, it wasn't happening. I'm just being real.
This is your grocery store gig.
I'm working at a grocery store. I'm scrubbing the floors. I'm delivering. Listen, I was delivering groceries across the street from 29th and Vernon over there in the projects. Man, listen, I would carry 4 bags of groceries with me at the same time and not take the elevator because the elevators were super nasty. The steps were filled with urine and feces. But what you didn't want to do is make 2 trips. Because once they see you coming, they think you got money. They try to rob you.
Yeah.
So I learned how to carry 4 bags of groceries at one trip and deliver them bad fellas and be out.
Yep.
And actually they tip pretty good over there in the projects. I used to get like $20 tips going to the projects. For real. It was
This is pre DoorDash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But I digress. So I learned how to do that. And I was like, this is cool. So I, got these weird little toy sounds and stuff and trying to make something. It wasn't working. So I said, you know what? I got more time than I got money. Let me see if I can just make some of my own sounds. So I took that bad fella with my little Radio Shack headphones, got in bed every night. And for about 6 months straight, I just worked on sounds. I got to the point where if I wanted that bad fella to make a certain sound, I knew how to do it. I could be like, I want a sound like this. I knew exactly what waveform to use. I knew exactly where to go on my DCOs and what to put it to, and then be like da 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 da. Man, and it was just like it took me a long time. And then this is one thing I didn't put this in the article, so I guess it's exclusive for you guys. But my CZ 101 had an error in it. So in some of the patterns, it had an error. Like it was like, so the patterns would go from like 0 to 99, right?
Right.
But on some of them, they were aired out, and I would have to clear them, and go ahead and make a sound again. But one time I said, you know what? This sound kind of weird. It had like a infinity sign on it instead of 99. And I said, let me
Try
mess
it
around
out.
with this and see what happens. So if you listen to Computer Madness, when you get to the part where the crescendo, where when Mike Dunn did the mix,
Yep.
he took the volume down and he brought it up, and it went to that crescendo part, and the sounds started getting real crazy. That was one of them sounds where I had taken the error and used that, and so the sounds, it was almost like random, like it just started doing all type of random stuff.
But it worked.
And the funny thing is, the bass line never changed. So there, the bass line sounded different because that sound was different, but the bass line never changed. And another quick fact: there are no filters on the CZ101.
Okay.
So when you listen to Computer Madness, it sounds like I'm filtering the sounds and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have any of that equipment. But what I knew how to do was program sounds. So I programmed that CZ101
program the hell out of it.
Sound like it was filtering.
Okay.
As I switched between sound and sound, because on the 505, you use a pattern play. So what does that mean? While the track is playing, you want to go to the next pattern. I would hit that pattern, and it would, on the next 4 beats, it would just switch
on the 4 count.
So I would hit it, and then I would hook my hand over my keyboard, and then right as it was gonna change to that next beat, I would change the sound. So it was real. It was a manual process.
Yeah.
But because of the way I programmed the sounds, it sounded like it was phasing and filtering and that kind of thing. And I think Mr. Poindexter did some interviews saying, yeah, Wes was working on the filters and I was working on that. And that's just not true.
We got the exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, you can
clarity.
And if you don't believe me, you can Google a CZ101, pull it up, look at it. There are no filters on a CZ101.
So let me back up a moment just to ask, after you discovered the ability to essentially create pattern sequences, how did you get that recorded, or did you first go back and just make sure you got the kind of sounds that you were after?
So what happened was, like I said, it took me 6 months to come up with these crazy, weird sounds that I thought nobody would like. Honest to God, I really didn't think anybody liked these sounds, but they were different. And so I was like, well, and I was trying to really emulate my heroes, which was Future, and, rest in peace, Spanky, Herb J, and DJ Pierre. They made acid tracks, and to me, that was like one of the most like revolutionary tracks to come out of Chicago. Like just the drum pattern, the way it built, and then when the acid track came in and the way it just kind of eased in, and then they started following the rhythm, and just it was amazing. So I didn't have that, right? So I didn't even know what they used to make it. I ain't gonna lie. But so what I decided to do was take these weird sounds that I had and just change them. Just keep changing the sounds. I'm gonna just keep changing the sounds like it's an acid track. That was my. So Computer Madness was my version of acid tracks without having a TB303.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is an intricate story about how you created, how you discovered the sounds. I want to move into what you did with the work product, or what somebody did with the work product.
So, okay, I'll go into that. So I bought a Yamaha 4-track, which I still have, by the way, and I use that to record Computer Madness. I also use it to record Work That Motherfucker as well. But I used a drum machine that was owned by a guy named Garen Vaughn. So Garen Vaughn was the owner of that drum machine. But you know, he was a great DJ and all of
Yes.
that, and he was starting to get into making tracks. But you know, like I had a little studio. You know what I'm saying? I had
Where were you
in my
in the
basement,
basement?
in my
Right?
basement,
Right.
you know,
Okay. Tell it.
and
Tell it all. Don't skip on the details.
and you know who's got, I don't even know if I say this man's name, but he's my man, my main man, 50 grand. The one brother who can tell you what my studio looked like probably better than anybody else in the world except for me is Terry Hunter. That man's memory is unfreaking believable. He described my studio to me like he was standing there with me, like last year. Yeah.
Shout out to Terry Hunter
Yes.
out in LA right now, waiting on
Yes.
that.
Shout out to Terry
statue.
Hunter about to get that Grammy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we speaking that into existence.
For sure.
So I had a little small, like, so in my basement, we had basically 2 storage rooms, right? So the left side was like storage, and we had a door to get in there. And the right side, I made a little makeshift studio. I just brought a table in there.
Yeah.
It already had like a little shelf. I put like my reel to reel over to the left side. I put some speakers on the right side. And I had one speaker on the floor that wasn't even being used. I used to put like that drum machine on that.
Dude, it's
And
yeah, a little
the
stand.
RZ1. Yeah, I used the speaker as a stand. It wasn't working, you know. I had blew out, so I could use it for something, right? And at that point, I'd had my house broken into a few times, and we got some insurance money, so I actually got some 12s. So I had 2 12s, little mixer, you know what I'm saying? And I had my
studio
CZ,
was growing out,
right? And I had my CZ101 sitting on top of them 12s, so you know you keep the cases down,
the dust cover, yeah,
the dust covers, and boom, it sat right in the middle, and that's where the keyboard was. Then I had the 505 over to the left side of the keyboard, and then I had my 4-track over to the right side. And actually, I used to put the 4-track on the speaker until I got my boy's RZ1 or whatever like that, and that's what I would use to record. But you know, it was cool back in the day. I wasn't really part of everybody else who was really making music back then. You know, like it was like me and Steve was just like a team, and we was gonna do this stuff together. And you know, man, I looked up to that brother. Like I really looked up. I mean, he's a charismatic guy. Like he's really like, if you've ever met him and you talk to him, it's like, man, you know, you can't help but like him.
So, and the like aside,
right?
The business again, I bring to bear here. How did you first become aware that credit for the track was not appropriately allotted and assigned to you?
So,
because you put in a lot of work, clearly.
Right. So what happened was
to do this.
You know, the track was released. You know, and he actually gave me a test press. You know, of course, as a DJ, I wanted 2 test presses.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, these are my records and your records because we're supposed to be doing a 50-50 thing. And he said, nah, you can't get 2 test presses. You only get 1. I got to give them out to other DJs. I said, dude, this is my record too. Like, I can't get 2 test presses. That's crazy. I should have known then, man. I should have known then, man. Dude, I should have known then, bro. You know, but you know, he already taken my 4-track to when he told me Mike Dunn's house to get it mastered or whatever, Westbrook Studios or whoever. And and he returned my 4-track. It took him like a month almost to return my 4-track. That's another thing I didn't put in the article, but it took him a long time. I was really upset about that because I didn't have money to buy another 4-track. You know, I'm making $3 an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This was a big deal to me.
And this is still you're 16,
like 16, 17 by now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm
so high school.
Right. High school. I didn't have that type of money. So he finally brought it back. He just gave me my backpack and I was so happy. I opened it up. I saw the 4-track in there. I was like, oh, thank God. So I zipped it up and, you know, whatever. And he was like, man, I heard you told people, man, that you made Work Daddy, you made Computer Madness. I said, I did. He was like, man, you shouldn't be doing that, man. And I'm like, look, we said we're gonna split the credit 50-50, but you know I made these tracks. Like,
there was there still charisma in play?
Nah, wasn't no charisma no more, man.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think at the time he had like a little white Nissan Sentra. He had just got it too, because they were giving them bad fellas away, man. They weren't even checking credit back then. And I don't even think he put oil change that car. He drove that car to death, man. But he pulled up his little Nissan Sentra.
Yeah.
Because the whole time I knew him, he never had a car.
Okay.
So he had got a car right as the test presses was coming out and stuff like that.
In this process.
Right.
Okay.
And so then, I was trying to contact him after I got the 4-track back and all that, and he wouldn't answer my calls. I don't know, like, what happened. And so I was like, man, he just disappeared. And I was like, all right. So I never saw him. And then one day, I think I was at some record store. I don't even know which one. And it wasn't even at the plaza. I think I was like at some suburban record store, and I saw my record, Steve Poindexter, Computer Madness, Work That Motherfucker, Chilling with the P. What's that? Because I didn't know what he was gonna name that song. And then,
but that was still one of the songs you all worked on jointly.
Right. And he had very little input. Man, it was anyway. And then I found out, talking to Mike Dunn, that song was actually supposed to be the one that had the acid track in it, because I went to California with Roy Davis Jr. and Mike Dunn. They spun at a club called Rhonda. So while we were there, we were talking about it. And Mike said, yeah, he said, I did that. The acid track was supposed to be called Chilling with the P, because he said, because I was chilling with the P, right? So that track was supposed to be called Chilling with the P. But, when you send it to the press and all that, they don't care. They just boop, boop. They flipped it around, mess it up or whatever. And so that's what happened with that. But yeah, after that, he was ghost. So
just want to pause a moment, because Garen Vaughn checked in. He said, "What's up, bro?
What's up, Garen?"
Along with Joseph Thomas.
Okay, that's what's up.
D. McCoy is in the building.
Okay.
Leukemia people.
Okay.
Don't know, but thanks for tuning.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, along with Scott Lee and Shy Rock 232.
Oh, it's my brother. That's Kirk. What's up, Kirk?
Yeah.
Kirk was there when I was doing all this stuff.
They are expressing deep appreciation for you sharing this story. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So I forgot exactly where I was at. So when he he went ghost. He went ghost. So Garen had a cousin that was an attorney, right? And so once I found out that he had stolen my music, I went to his cousin, and Garen hooked me up with him and was like, man, help my boy out. And since that was his cousin, he helped me out. He didn't charge me nothing.
Okay. But
he did some phone calls and looking around, and he came back after like a month. Like, he was like, man, this is on an underground label. He said it's not like a real label. Like, they just pressing the stuff up and sending it out. Like, it's not. He was like, man, I don't really know what I can do about this, And then remember, it was so early on, the record hadn't done nothing. You know what I'm saying?
It hadn't really created the buzz.
It hadn't done anything. It was, people liked it and people starting to buy it.
It was Chicago vibe,
right?
Initially, and
right. And the weird thing is, I didn't find out the record started doing anything until like 2013. So I never knew. Like, I knew people liked it, worked that, like that kind of stuff. And Computer Man, they'd be like, doo, 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 but I was like, I heard Computer Madness play on the radio a few times, stuff like that, but I didn't know it was like a big deal. So my cousin, Desiree Bolin, she's married to Thomas Bolin. So at the time, he owned a warehouse, a big 10,000 square foot warehouse out in the suburbs, in Dalton. And he wanted to do a party. So he said, hey, cuz, I want you to come out, man, because you're in the house music. And I want you to, help me, talk to these house guys and negotiate all that.
Yep.
I was like, cool. So I came out and I walked in the room, and to my surprise, Steve Poindexter was sitting in the room, along with Roy Davis Jr., J.R. Jordan, and another guy named Ellery Coles. And there was like a few other people there, like from the business side on Thomas's side, my cousin Thomas.
It was a room. And
right. And so I walked in,
some people,
and I looked at Steve, and I was kind of floored, like
taken aback.
Right. So I walked over to him. I walked over to him on his left side, and I put my right hand on his left shoulder. And he looked up at me, and he looked back down. He looked up at me. He stood up. He threw his hands up. He said, "This is the guy. This is the guy." And so everybody's like, "This is what guy? What are you talking about?" He said, "This is the guy. They helped me make those tracks." So Roy said, like in a real low, calm voice, like I didn't even know who he was at the time. I didn't know he was Roy Davis Jr., right?
Right.
But he said, Steven, what tracks are you referring to? He said it just like that. I swear to God, he said it just like that. And
check in with us, Roy.
Right. And did he check in?
Not yet.
Not yet. But I was supposed to text him, but I didn't. But anyway, so he said, my first EP, Computer Madness, Work That Motherfucker, all that. So I said, Steve, I don't want to curse on the radio. I said, those are my effing tracks. And Steve just put his head down and was like, oh. And so then,
no dispute, no acknowledgement of your statement.
None.
No, nothing.
None. And so at that point, Roy Davis Jr. asked me to step out, and he wanted to have a talk with me. And I was like, I didn't know who he was. He said, I'm Roy Davis Jr. He said, it's an honor to meet you, Mr. Green. And I said, who? You're Roy Davis Jr.? I said, oh my God. It's like, you Mr. And so I was like excited, like to meet him.
Fanboying.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, man, this dude, he's that dude, right? And so I was like, well, Mr. Davis, it's an honor to meet you. And I said, why you say it's an honor to meet me? He said, because you made Computer Madness and Work That Motherfucker, right? I said, yeah, but those songs wasn't nothing. Nobody, they played them a little bit on the radio, but that was it. He said, oh my God, you really don't know. I said, don't know what? He said, man, listen, I got 384 published tracks right now. He said, I done had tracks that sold over 50,000 copies. I done had tracks that sold over 100,000. He said, man, you add up all my tracks, my whole catalog together. Computer Madness by itself outsold them all. Work That outsold them all by themselves individually. I said, I can't say what I said. I was like, get your. He was like, man, can I have your number, sir? I said, yeah, you got my number. Roy called me up.
Yes.
He got me on the phone with Jeff Craven from Large Records.
Large, yeah.
And Jeff went online and started pulling up like just the publishing deals, I guess, because he wasn't gonna never see like how many records were sold. They were doing P&D deals. That Ray Barney, I think, was pushing that stuff out back then. And who knows who else was bootlegging that stuff too.
For those tuned in that may not know, P&D, pressing and distribution deals.
Right, a press and distribution deal. So he just started looking the stuff up, and his voice kind of got like shaky. And he was like, "Oh my God, man, these records have sold a lot, like just in licensing deals." And he was like, "Wow." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what's, you know?"
You were not in tune with what was happening
I
from a
wasn't.
business standpoint because you were a creative, right? And that was your focus.
He was like, one licensing deal was 800,000 sold. Another licensing deal was 700,000 sold. Another licensing deal was 600,000 sold. Another licensing deal was 500,000 sold. Another licensing deal was like almost 500,000. So he just kept reading, and then I literally think he started to like choke up a little bit, and I was like, and I felt a little bit dizzy. I was like, wait a minute, this didn't happen. Like, that's not true. You know,
Right, because you weren't seeing
nobody like my little music like that, you know. And it was true.
So one of the questions that's come in from our audience, what wasn't there any music auditing? There are actually publishing companies is the question that would have been involved in this, like ASCAP or BMI. And did you have membership? Did you have a writer's membership to ASCAP or BMI?
No,
right?
heck no. I didn't have no membership in ASCAP or BMI.
Thanks for that question.
I was
Scott.
16 and I didn't know nothing about that. Man, listen, my mom was like, I was trying to get her to let me go to the studio with Steve so that we could get the stuff put on that. And I said, Mama, if I don't go, they, you know, he might steal my music.
Yeah.
And she said, that bumpity bump stuff ain't gonna make no money. Take your butt to bed. You gotta go tomorrow. Carmo tomorrow. Nobody care about this bumpity bump crap.
Man, you pushing the
and I was like,
hard tonight.
Man, so you know, I mean, I never, you know, I tried to do like a poor man's copyright. So I took like a cassette, put it in an envelope, mailed it back to myself, and thought maybe I could protect myself like that. But as I found out later, they said that's not enforceable in court and all that kind of stuff. And you know, and then, you know, I just went away to college, man, and you know, got into IT, and I've been very blessed. God has blessed me like 10,000 fold, man. Like, He's just blessed me. It's too much stuff to talk about, man. Like, I had type 2 diabetes, reversed it. My A1C is like 4.2. You know, I lost 65 pounds. I had sciatic nerve pain so bad that I had to pray to God for help because the pain was so enormous. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do.
God is good all the time, bro.
And, you know, and at that moment, He took my pain and I got an inversion tape. I've had a lot of stuff I went through, man, and God's been with me the whole way. And I believe that God's the one that wanted me to get my rights back, man. So, you know,
that's powerful. That you brought your spiritual dimension to this pursuit, because, you know, again, this is it could be boiled down to a business transaction. And as we know here in Chicago, in the earliest days of both house music and gospel and R&B, right, we weren't always up on the mechanisms, right, for getting our due credit and proper compensation for our creative product and craft. And so this is a unique story, because the next phase of it is that this ultimately led to a credit dispute that you pursued and you engaged a bunch of people. Talk about what that process was.
You know, that night when I saw Steve, you know, he tried to convince me to work with him again. He's like, Wes, man, we can do it again, man. We can do it again. Come on, Wes, man, we can do it again, man. I said, Steve, do what again? I never received a dime for all this stuff. He said, Wes, I ain't making no money on that either. I can show you emails right now. I ain't make no money, man. No money. I promise you. I can show you the emails. But, man, Wes, we can do it again.
The mechanical rights, for sure, there was some connection.
He made
right?
a lot of money, bro.
Whenever that vinyl, those orders for distribution.
Man, Computer Madness is in video games and TV shows, movies. Like it's, it's everything. It's everywhere. But in 2022, Work That was named out of the top 200 dance tracks of all time by Rolling Stone, number 66. Like this isn't just some track. These aren't just some tracks. These are iconic tracks that help solidify the foundation of house in Chicago.
No doubt. And you've got many tuned in from the house community. I want to shout out DJ Randall Dean.
What's up, Randall?
Russell.
Actually, Russell, was an integral part too. He really pushed me, man, to, get my rights back.
Great friend of the show.
And, he was like, man, Wes, you got PTSD, man, but you got to let it go, baby. You got to let it go, man. And yeah, he was very instrumental, man.
Skip, or Shannon Sias and Steve Hurley. That's
Shannon and Steve, what's up?
Checking in. Rhonda Flowers,
what's up? Yeah,
and Scott Lee.
Me, Rhonda, actually, and Russell did a party in Amsterdam, like in 2019. ADE, yeah. And I think next year we'll probably do another one. So, but anyway, going back to the story, So I forgot exactly where I was at.
Well, we were talking about the fact that you came to this realization that,
right,
and then you recognized the need to dispute
exactly
what had happened.
So that night I talked to Steve. I was like, look, man, I just want my name on my publishing. You know what I'm saying? Like, just add my name to the publishing or whatever like that. So I didn't know at the time, Steve had also talked to him. I mean, Roy Davis Jr.
Roy had talked to Steve
and said, look, man, you don't make this right with Wes. I'm going to tell everybody in the house music community to not mess with you at all. So after that, Steve went and did an article in Resident Advisor.
All right,
it's called That Raw Basement Sound. If you go read that, he talks about me. Yeah, this guy named Wes. He had a studio. He helped me make these tracks and all that. So at least he talked about me. He said that I was a person and that I had a studio and I worked on the music, but he still alleged that he did all this stuff, right?
Okay.
I worked with him, tried to get him. He's like, man, those tracks old, man. Those tracks old. I give you publishing on my new stuff. I said, Steve, I don't want publishing on your music. I just want publishing just mine. Like, I don't want nothing you did. I could care less about that stuff. And I mean, and I have a challenge to any DJ out there. Any DJ. Name me 3 songs that Steve Poindexter did without naming Computer Madness, Work That Motherfucker, Chilling with the Feet, or Whiplash. I'll wait. Anyway, so
comments are coming in.
Yeah, I bet. And I said 2 because most people can name Short Circuit, right? But outside of that, I don't know. And you can't say Bessie Smith because that was Gene Hunt's track. That wasn't his. But anyway, so, and you can call Gene on that. Ask him if you want to. Total facts. But
so you had to move forward by taking legal action.
So so I tried to work with him. He wouldn't work with me. So I got a law firm called Citigroup out of the UK and an attorney named Raymond Croker. And
why the UK? Just out of curiosity.
Because they specialize in those type of things.
And it was a global publishing issue.
Exactly. So like they went up against like Warner Chappell, Sony Music. Like, in fact, their company doesn't normally take
an individual
like mine, like me. Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was introduced to him by a dear friend, and when he heard my story and he went and did research to find out if it was true, right? Because he was like, I'm not just going to take this case if it's not true. He came back to me and said he would take my case. And I didn't know he did all this research. And I said, well, Do you want to know like what happened all that? He said, I already know what happened. I did my research. I verified that your story is true, and I'm gonna take your case. And he said, because we need to right a wrong. And I just couldn't believe it. And they were amazing. Like the law firm was amazing, and they helped me get my rights to my publishing back. And yeah,
Wow.
and it took over a year. Yeah.
So the law firm, that was certainly the right choice to affect the outcome that you got. You also had friends that were, I'm assuming, just personal friends. But talk a little bit about the rest of the Chicago music community. You made reference to Roy Davis Jr.'s uh, influence in this issue.
He's very influential in this whole thing. None of this probably would have happened without him. This man called me once a day for 6 months straight. I don't know if anybody knows like people like him, or like Shannon, Steve, Maurice Joshua, Terry Hunter, anybody like not to say they're all on the same level, but I'm saying people are really serious about their craft.
Yes.
They don't call people every day, and they will not answer your call every day. Fair. If you don't believe me, just try it. Like, try to call. If you got Steve Hurley's number, try to call him right now. See if he answers. He's not going to answer because he's busy. He's a professional. He has to make his money and do his thing. He cannot answer your call.
We are all grinding for sure.
Roy Davis Jr., he's a professional. He cannot take your call every day. Maurice Joshua, he's a professional. He's not going to take your call every day. Terry Hunt. None of these people are going to take your calls every day. People who, this is what they really do for a living, they don't have that type of time.
Well, I got to caveat that they do generally pick up for the Vintage House Show, just to show.
If you call them 3 or 4 times in a week, you will not get that phone call answered every time. I almost guarantee you.
We get a good call back rate.
They call you back. Yeah. They're gonna answer it every day.
But your point is well made.
Right.
And the that community to rally around you really says a lot.
Yeah.
So it says a whole lot.
And I really didn't talk to people about it that much when I was coming up, because it was like, who was going to believe me? It was like, now when I was in school at Mark Cromwell, they knew I made these tracks,
Oh, your classmates.
My classmates knew I made it, right?
Right.
I gave Terry Hunter the first tape to play Work That at the Bismarck.
Okay.
And next time you talk to Terry Hunter, ask him about the story. But he played Work That at the Bismarck, and I swear to God, I thought the floor was going to cave in. Them kids started going crazy.
Yeah.
I literally walked off the dance floor and stood in the doorway, knowing that the doorway was reinforced and was stronger than just standing on the floor
in the middle of the dance floor.
Because I didn't want the dance floor to cave in and I fall with it. You know what I'm saying? So I backed up. And Terry told me some years ago when he played it that they went crazy, and he said, I didn't even know how to get out of the track. Yep.
That's a great story. So we're certainly just immersed in this story, and we weaved our way through a lot of it. But with 5 minutes left for this episode of Vintage House, I want to ask you a very important question, and that is, what, if any, changes have you seen occur in not just your story, but from a collaboration standpoint in Chicago? Do you feel that it is truly now a community of sharing, of equal participation and equity? Or do you think that there's still instances of this kind of misdirection and misuse of someone's intellectual property going on?
Oh my God. Yeah. Listen, you're not about to get everybody hating me on this bad fella. I mean, the reality is you already know the answer to that. You know, somebody will rob you going to your car, man. You think they won't take your music? I could tell you a million stories that I know to be a fact. There's some people on the chat right now that could tell you some of the stories, stuff that happened to them. I'm not gonna name no names. Uh, but stuff happens, man, and it's not about what happens to you, it's what you do about it, you know. And it's not always easy to stand up, you know, and it's not cheap to stand up either. You know what I'm saying? Like, in order to make all this stuff happen, you're gonna have to, have some money. You're gonna have to be able to hire the right people. And it's not easy, But again, I've been blessed, and um, God put me in a position where I could, handle this.
And there's no question. I appreciate your again the spiritual dimension from which you tell the story and give the appreciation and of course grace and praise from where it all comes from and stems from. I think you've also, individually empowered people that have listened and read about this story, and they're going to stand up because of Louie West Green.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel great, man. And I've actually reached out to people that I know that had their music taken and told them, if they need help, I would try to put them in touch with the right people, help them. There's some specific people I reached out to recently, but it's hard, man. People they don't they're unsure and they don't know what to do, and it's tough, man. It's tough to stand up because people look at you different, you know. And everybody's like, "Oh man, it's been almost 40 years. Why you wait 40 years to try to get your rights to your music back?" I didn't wait 40 years to get the rights to my music back. Tried to get the rights to my music back right away.
It was a journey.
It was a journey.
Yeah. And certainly resilience, determination are all characteristics that were important uh, to have in this journey. I certainly want to thank you for taking the time for Chicago's community to come on the Vintage House Show and tell the story. But it wouldn't be an ending that would be appropriate without learning what is next for Wes Green.
Well, what's next? I've got a new EP coming out called My First Computer. I've got a track on there that I went back to my old school CZ 101, spent a year making sounds again, and put that together. I actually redid Computer Madness, went back, reprogrammed all my original sounds, the ones that I could do. Some of them is just, you know, I did the best I could. But I've got a new version of that unfortunately one of my good friends has said he wouldn't send it to nobody, send it out to a bunch of people. And I even heard DJ Alicia playing it in one of her mixes live, which was cool. She didn't know. She just got a we transfer with the files. It was like, man, this is dope. Um, but but yeah, so I got a few things happening, and in March 23rd, I believe the new EP drops, and yeah, so it's hopefully people enjoy it.
So we were prepared to try to play a little snippet
Okay.
tonight. I'm not seeing the next show host coming up, so if you bear with us, we'll certainly try to drop
Go for it.
An exclusive premiere of My First Computer,
Okay.
Wes Green. I want to certainly reach out to everybody that checked in, DJ Purple, again, Rasul, Randall Dean, Rhonda Flowers, SNS, our in studio crew. Of course, shout out to the executive producer of the Vintage House Show, Miss Lauren Lowry, my
Lauren
co-host.
Lowry, and she was very instrumental in this too because when she interviewed Mr. Poindexter on her show, she actually got him to admit that my name was on the record when it was first pressed, which is probably a shocker to most of you guys listening.
There is. I'm glad you did that because surely we have that interview and recording, but you were telling the story in such an engaging
Right,
way. I did not
right.
get to drop
And
that one.
he admitted that I actually made, the bass line for Computer Madness. He alleged she made the track. If you guys heard the track, come on, stop it. He did the snare drum intro and he named it. That's all that he did with Computer Madness. And work that, it was my track. It was his sample voice. And, we changed the hi-hats. And if you think about his story, it makes sense, right? If he said in his interview that he had me change the hi-hats for him because he couldn't do it, then that means the hi-hats were already programmed. So the track was already programmed. Garen Vaughn was there. His brother, his cousin John was there. My brother was there. He came in my studio and said, "Hey, let's make a track called Work That Motherfucker." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, here's a tribal track. Let's do it." And he was like, "Cool." And then I maybe walked out the studio for a minute, came back, and all he did was start sliding the drum volume controls up and down to hear the different patterns. He was like, "Yeah, this is dope." And he gonna try to take credit for the track? It was ridiculous.
So we've got that. We've got that video clip. We're going to try to play that as well
Okay.
as the new release coming out March
23rd.
2024, My First Computer. And we want to thank Louie Green for being in studio here at WNUR 89.3 FM and HD1 in Evanston, Chicago, on this episode of the Vintage House Show with your main man, Mega. Of course, the Vintage House Show is every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Central, right here on 89.3, on Facebook Live, on twitch.tv, the Vintage House Show, and everywhere you enjoy your favorite podcast. And of course, we got a new episode dropping this week. I'm looking for my executive producer to let me know when that's going to drop. But we are going to play a segment of the interview that Lauren Lowry had with Steve Poindexter, and you can hear it for yourself. All right. So, of course, technical challenges with getting that audio out over the air. But definitely tune in to the podcast for that bonus content. It will definitely air tomorrow. So go to everywhere you would normally download your podcast, from Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, and you'll get the bonus content that includes the original interview where Mr. Poindexter provided clarity on the production of that EP. And then we'll also attach the new release, a snippet, of course, because we want you to go out and support Wes Green for the full release of My First Computer. I think at this point, I will try to get in a Wes Green mix to close this out. But thanks everyone again for tuning in to the Vintage House Show. It's your main man, Mega. I am back with you on the fourth Wednesday of each and every month. We'll have a very special show for you in February. Come on over, Lou, and man, appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, coming through to tell the story in a powerful way that everyone seemed to enjoy and appreciate. And let's get you up here. Normally there's another jock, so we could have probably continued the story, but wasn't ready for it. Was not ready. So yeah. Everyone tuned in still. We got the behind the scenes of the Vintage House Show going. So for those loyal listeners that will stay tuned in, you might just get to hear it over the air. Got to fill this dead air with some good house music coming up in 1 second. Trying to get it up. Mm-hmm. So for those over the air, they're enjoying a shot of Computer Madness. My studio monitors won't give me any volume. Go old school.